It's the Flow Morning Show, and you heard Sam Smith, and a good one before that from Red Hot Chili Peppers. Francesca Ballesteros is on the way, and I'll have a look at what's happening in the national rural news. A tennis update from the Australian Open, but we have a look at what is an important emerging story, and one that we've been watching for some time, and this is the situation with the Murray Darling Basin and water. The Interim Inspector General of Water Compliance in the Murray Darling Basin is Troy Grant. He attacked the past communication, the transparency and collaborative work by governments and the Basin Authority in a Senate hearing in Canberra on Wednesday of this week. Now, everyone comes to the Murray-Darling Basin debate with their own priorities and preferences, and South Australia's Senator Rex Patrick had a go at Mr Grant in the hearing, as he was not long ago the New South Wales National Party leader, and in 2012 had questioned the need to recover the amount of water currently being pursued in the Basin Plan. The 2,750 gigalitres plus another 450 of what is colloquially known as upwater. Much of these water savings are being pursued via efficiency measures rather than the maligned buybacks that have often meant that a farm is mothballed in the basin. Mr Patrick's question to Mr Grant and Mr Grant's response at the hearing on Wednesday that he would operate impartially. The inquiry heard that he was a long-term police officer before his parliamentary career. Here's Mr Grant talking about how he sees the Murray-Darling Basin role and what he perceives as a lack of communication between stakeholders.
What I've found personally is there is a severe lack of communication that is occurring. Everybody is operating in their own silos, and the most underutilised word being used when they're interacting with landholders or environmental groups or Indigenous groups is when decisions are made by bodies, they're not saying why, they're not explaining why, and they're certainly not talking to other groups about consequential outcomes. So if there's a decision made by a regulator, there's a lack of explanation as to why that decision's made, and if it's in relation to an environmental outcome, there's a lack of explanation as to what the environmental harm has been caused. So I think fundamentally one of the greatest roles we can play is to improve that communication and have it come from a source of independence. So the source of truth I referred to just previously can't be just about an integrated data set. It actually has to be on a communication level.
Well, for Mr Patrick's, for his part, pursued Mr Grant, and the reality for the Inspector General is that there are the interim appointee circumstances. The legislation that gives Mr Grant his powers has not yet been introduced to Parliament. No doubt the same senators, like Senator Rex Patrick and other MPs, will have much to say about the powers that should be given to him after his Senate committee appearance on Wednesday. I think there's something here that needs to be raised, and that is clearly that Troy Grant has had the association with the New South Wales Nationals. They, in turn, have been one of those that has been attacked in particularly New South Wales politics for their lack of transparency and members of Parliament themselves not voting in New South Wales Parliament for a register of owners of Australian water, particularly basin-owned water. One would suggest that there's going to be a lot of pressure put on Mr Grant to be transparent, to act with integrity at Wednesday's look at the circumstances of his appointment. Yes, there's going to be a lot more Senate questions, and I'm sure a fair few more of the House of Representatives MPs sticking their nose into this one. I'm sure that at state levels we're going to hear more about whether or not this appointment is the right one.